we can change the world. And I believe change begins with you and me.
Since their inception, our military forces have had an absolute ban on homosexuals. Now, a decorated Air Force sergeant who has had 3 tours in Vietnam is going to court to challenge that ban. On March 6, Sergeant Leonard Matlovich disclosed to a supervising officer at Langley Air Force Base in Virginia that he was a homosexual and wanted to stay in the Air Force. Last week, the Air Force moved to discharge him, and Matlovich, with a team of lawyers, plans this as a classic test case, if necessary, all the way to the Supreme Court. Today, Jed Duvall asked the 31-year-old sergeant about his decision to disclose his homosexuality.
It used to just tear me apart on the inside when I, in conversations, hear people say that, you know, we're discharging this queer or that queer. I had to come forward and say, no more America.
It turned out to be a history-making decision.
The 1970s was the birth of the modern gay rights movement. And so when Leonard Matlovich, who had been on magazine covers as a war hero, challenged the policy in the military, it began a national discussion.
Leonard Matlovich helped America learn to talk about homosexuality. He was a decorated Vietnam veteran who decided to challenge the military regulation against gays in uniform.
I was tired of coming to work every day fearing losing my job.
In the process, he brought homosexuality into the open in a manner and volume not known before in America.
Gay people, regardless of what their walk of life, school teachers or whatever, are American citizens and they deserve the same rights as every other person in this country.
The Air Force put Sergeant Matlovich on trial 12 years ago. Time put him on its cover.
There's no medical grounds whatsoever now which the armed forces can discriminate against us. So it just has to be strictly prejudice and discrimination.
The sergeant's plea to the... Matlovich lost at court-martial and was thrown out of the Air Force.
It was my personal loss, but it's going to be our victory.
But there are countless gays in military uniform, and it turned out, in clerical, police, football, baseball, and every other uniform there is. Gay Sergeant Matlovich, you see, taking the stand not so much in defense of his homosexuality, but in explanation of it, brought a lot of guys out of the closet.
Maybe not in my lifetime, but we are going to win in the end.
Anita Bryant was once known as an orange juice saleswoman. Not anymore. With a religious fervor that has made her America's most controversial woman overnight, she has been selling her Save Our Children group. Her group is crusading to repeal a new Dade County law which protects homosexuals in jobs and housing. Many people credit Matlovich with advancing the fight for gay rights in this country. He was discharged from the Air Force 2 years ago after he announced he was a homosexual. Today, the 33-year-old former sergeant lives in Miami. He believes his 12 years in the Air Force, a Brown Star and a Purple Heart, earned him the protection of Miami's new law.
I spent 3 years in Vietnam. I spent 4 months in the hospital for hitting a mine that blew up underneath my arm hair and my chest was still full of metal. Why did I do that? Why did I go to Vietnam and fight for the rights of the Vietnamese to make the world safer democracy there? Yet here in the United States, I'm being denied these very same rights that that I went over there to fight for.
Myself with the co-founders will never forget. 12 years ago, I lived 2 blocks from here, and I used to come down to this cemetery, and Peter Doyle is buried here, and Peter Doyle is Walt Whitman's lover. And 3 years ago, I was in Paris, France, and I was in a cemetery, and right before me was Alice B. Toklas and Gertrude Stein. And it was so powerful and so moving for me to be there, to be 2 individuals who did so much for us, who led the way. And it gave me chills. And as I came back to the United States flying on the plane, I realized that in America, we have nothing similar. That we're that young kid that Harvey Milk so eloquently spoke about in Altoona, Pennsylvania. That young kid could come and say, there's Harvey Milk. There's a person who did something to make my life better. And I said then, we need the same in this country. We need to never forget. We need to know our heroes, our heroines. We need to know the ones who went before us. Every one of you, you are a parent. And who are your children? Your children are tomorrow's lesbians and gays coming along. And being the caring, loving parents you are, we're going to leave a history today so they can pay homage to what we've done for them. I welcome you to the Congressional Cemetery. Thank you very much.
And I want you to look at our flag, our rainbow flag, and I want you to look at it with pride in your heart. Because we too have a dream. And what is our dream? Ours is more than an American dream. It's a universal dream. Because in South Africa, we're black and white. In Northern Ireland, we're Protestant and Catholic. And in Israel, we're Jew and Muslim. And our mission is to reach out and teach people to love and not to hate.
Leonard Matlovich has died in California. He was a veteran of Vietnam, the Bronze Star for bravery and a Purple Heart. In 1975, nonetheless, he was given a discharge from the Air Force after acknowledging publicly that he was a homosexual. And he fought as well for gay rights and the rights of those with AIDS. And he has died of AIDS. He was 44, and he was determined that people would remember. He will be buried in Washington, D.C., and his chosen epitaph is already on his gravestone. When I was in the military, they gave me a medal for killing 2 men and a discharge for loving 1.
Discrimination is a domestic enemy. I swore to defend fundamental values of America. These values are ignored by the current policy.
We have fought for our country. We have died for our country. This is not about special rights for anyone. It's about equal rights for everyone.
When I was in the Navy, going through basic training in Pensacola, we did a lot of training. We did a lot of running. We would run as a class of 72 in my case, and every morning at 5 a.m., the 72 of us would file up into formation, and at the front of that formation was someone we called the guide-on. And the guide-on carried a staff, and on that staff was a pennant and streamers. The pennant represented our class, and the streamers represented all of the accomplishments that our unit had made it through the various stages of our training. And the guide-on would carry that staff and guide our class on those 5-mile runs at 5 o'clock in the morning. And it was not an easy job running and carrying that staff. And as we progressed, the guide-on would pass the staff to the man behind him, who would then take the position as the guide-on and lead our unit throughout that run. And it would pass from man to man and man to woman and woman to woman throughout that run. In our community, in the gay and lesbian military community, that staff, that pennant, and those streamers lay on the ground for decades. Members of the armed forces looked at that staff with that pennant and all of their accomplishments as dedicated heroes, and no one picked it up. No one showed the courage. No one until Leonard Matlovich came along. And in 1975, Leonard picked up that staff, he picked up that pennant, and he picked up all the streamers that represented the hundreds of years of service of soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines, and he ran with it. Leonard lived a life of truth that represents all of us here today. And that was Leonard Matlovich's moment for us, for all of us here today. And when he could run no more with that staff, he handed it off to the next man and the next woman. The Keith Meinholds, the Joe Steffens, the Greta Kammermeyers, the Justin Elsies, and the Dan Choys that are carrying that staff here today.
I stand on the sacrifices of those who have taken a stand before me. I stand on the sacrifices and the shoulders of Leonard Matlovich. I stand on the shoulders of Dr. Martin Luther King.
When I was in the military, they gave me a medal for killing 2 men and a discharge for loving one.
And